I'm Bob Avant, and that
I'm Dave
guy,
Harris.
that guy over there is Dave, wherever he is. I don't know. Is Dave Harris, and we are here to answer questions that you may have come up with through the day, maybe as a result of either of our sessions that you just felt like you needed a follow up question on that, or maybe there's something else that you wanted to hear from attending that we did not address in any of our sessions. Anything goes. Anything goes. Um, so this format is a little non-conducive to Q&A, I have to say, because we cannot see or hear any of you. All we have is the chat window. So if you would let us know you're there, and then
That'd be good.
throw us a question. So he is Dave. He directs this little group out of Raleigh, North Carolina, called the Raleigh Ringers. That I don't know. They play a concert or two every year, don't you? How many do you play every year?
You're not counting 2020.
No, not counting. Nobody's counting 2020. 2020 does not exist. 2021 almost doesn't exist.
Yeah, I know. It exists. Half of it exists for us, but yeah, generally about between 20 and 25 concerts a year. So, and we just started back up, so we'll do kind of a half year this year. We start in January. We run on a probably not so conventional. We run on a calendar year. So,
yeah, that is interesting. It'd be interesting to hear that. I mean, we've got a little time, I think, and we'll get to Taylor's question in just a moment. But you mentioned that you start in January, and your membership is stable and committed starting in January through December, and then you recycle. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay.
And the main reason for that is just because in 1990 we formed in January. But as it's turned out, when we've looked at changing that or making updates, our holiday concerts, like with every handbell choir, lots of handbell choirs want to say, oh, handbells aren't just for Christmas or whatever. It's like, we need to take advantage of that because people want to hear handbells at Christmas. So bring it on, So I feel like we're humming pretty well by December. So when we've toyed with the idea of, well, let's start in, August or September, I think, well, I'd like more months under my belt before we meet the big numbers that we see in December. So we've never strayed from that. But, sometimes when we're on grant cycles and so forth, we've got everybody else in the world is on a, school year, church year kind of thing. So it does cause a little bit of a bump in the road, but it works for us.
Yeah, that's great. I've always been impressed with that. And the level of commitment you guys give to each other is just phenomenal. So kudos all the way around for all of that.
Thank you, sir.
Taylor has a question, and Dave will answer it for you.
Since it's our last session of the day, I can't get too mad at Bob. So,
why don't you go ahead and repeat the question out loud, because anyone watching this recording may not see it.
Thank you for such an incredible day of knowledge. We could just leave it at that. But no, he's got a further part. All right. What advice do you have for brand new handbell directors? I'm taking over for our traditional music minister next month. To me, we talked a little bit about it in my techniques class. I think it's important. Actually, David Davidson, the late David Davidson, who was an amazing musician and big advocate for handbells and did a lot for Handbell Musicians of America. When I started out, he gave me a little bit of advice that said, you need to have a grasp on all the techniques. If you're not able to demonstrate, and again, Bob and I have talked that, I'm not a big four-in hand guy, and I can't do some of the crazy treble stuff that some of our ringers do, but you need to be able to step behind the table and show people this is what you want. He always mentioned that he met groups that were unsuccessful where weren't as successful, where some of the very strong ringers kind of took over, and the director maybe didn't, because the director was put in a position of, I do all this other stuff and I have to cover handbells, so I'll figure it out as I go along. Joining, handbell musicians, or things and denomination things that give you those kind of things are very, very helpful. But I've always taken that advice, and I remember that advice, that if this week we're gonna introduce a new technique that we hadn't used in a while, I need to show it to the group first, so they know that I've got a grasp on that, and it's just not everybody else's job. So that's one piece of advice. What else? Taking a handbell program. Yeah, we covered a little bit of that today. I assume, Taylor, that your group, you've got the equipment. We talked today in our beginning class about, all the stuff you need to gather if you're just starting out. But it seems like you maybe are in a position of taking over, and you've got all the equipment and so forth. One of the things we talk about in the leadership class, I guess it was the rehearsal class, is the best way to recruit. So one of the things these days is, always everyone's having trouble getting enough ringers. I think the very best way to recruit is to play really well. Don't, have somebody in the congregation say, I want to do that because I was touched by that piece. And twisting someone's arm to be in the bell choir, for me, when I did church bell choirs for 5 years or so, never really worked really well, because they were only there because somebody made them be there. Whether it was, the spouse of the director, or, a friend of another person that just was coming along with the other. They were just hanging because I wanted to be with this other person. So you got to want to be in the bell choir. And I really think playing well and doing a good job and really reaching that person and having them come up to the tables after church and say, you know what, that really touched me. When is rehearsal? All of a sudden you got somebody hooked that way. So,
yeah, Taylor, I would add, for brand new handbell directors, don't go it alone. You are the one and only handbell expert in your position, and so there are other resources. There are other people that do what you do nearby in other churches. Try to make a contact with the local people to do so. I'd also encourage connection with the National Organization Handbell Musicians of America, who put on a national level event once a year, at least once 1 year, and areas, subgroups of the national organization put on the every other summer, usually, an event for everyone to come to. That it also includes classes, sessions, anything and everything is available with that. But that's one resource that you really ought to jump in on and try to get connected with. There's also another one, this for everybody, of course, that I think there may be some movement towards trying to establish like a mentor arrangement or mentor program through some of the handbell groups on Facebook, as a connector. And that would be a way for you to reach out to somebody anywhere in America and pick their brain. It could be Dave, could be me, could be any number of hundreds and hundreds of other people who are all very willing. This is a very willing group to work with people. So I hope all that will take a good precedence. Thank you, Jesse. Let's see, Karen. I find that I need to review techniques with my handbell choir from time to time, even basic ringing. Do you find that to be the case in other handbell choirs? Yes. Habits are habits, and once you start down a different path, it takes a long time to break a bad habit. So yeah, always try to be aware of what you see from your perspective as a director, as you look across the table, And if there's a marked lift, and you notice that, hey, everybody's looking good and coming up to the height that you want, except for George over here, it's an opportunity to reteach and reestablish the basics that you want. It's really hard to get 13 people or so to do the very same thing at the very same time. It's difficult. Um, different approaches to things, different physical capabilities. Maybe somebody has a problem with a physical problem with bones or whatever, and they can't possibly look like everybody else. Okay, that's great, but other than things like that, you try to be unified in how you look and feel and how you perform different um, techniques and things. Jesse has
The
a
other
question
thing,
for Dave.
yeah, the other thing, just to add, I mean, I mentioned earlier the director really needs to know all the techniques to be able to teach them. But sometimes I find that ringers really like. I mean, we started a mentor program when people join our group, and there's, obviously they've come to our group with a skill level that's pretty high, but there's sometimes things that need to be refined, and I have them work with their mentor on that. Especially early on when they're a little bit overwhelmed with a lot of new things and everything's new and who are these people and so forth, and a new person coming in the choir, your church choir may have the same thing. It's a little bit easier for them to talk to a peer and to get that advice and counsel, if you will, from a peer early on than maybe the director saying, all of a sudden, because you don't want to lose them. All of a sudden, if you pointed me out and you said, kind of thing. So oftentimes I'll say, why don't you guys, offline sometime between now and next week, why don't you guys get together and you show her how to do some of these things? And that sometimes works really well.
Good. Thank you. And let's see, Suda has a topic and a question. It's about assignments, using assignments to support the musicality. And do we have any suggestions for easing ringers into accepting changing positions even occasionally? Yeah, in a church setting, sometimes it's hard because, I mean, I was told specifically by one of my church ringers, I'm not moving. Don't move me. I like these bells. I can play these. I can't do anything with anyone else's. Don't move me. So I didn't. I respected that, and that's okay. But as far as like getting others to accept that, maybe just kind of get them accustomed to changing on a temporary basis would be a way to jump into that. Like take a piece of music that is a level or even 2 levels easier than what you normally would put together, and say, okay, we're going to ring the first 32 measures here. Good, you've done that. Great. All right. Musical chairs, go. And make people move around. Say, all right, here's measure 33, and start from there and go another section, and then do it again with a different group until you get through the piece. And just the process of shifting around in a non-threatening, non-permanent environment may get them more accustomed. And you can do that more and more until you say, oh, would you mind playing here on this piece, and start breaking them in that way. And I agree with you, Suda. I use assignments not just for musicality, but for performance ability, depending on the group and the ringers. I will assign them in places where they can be successful with whatever the difficulty of the music presents, knowing that ringer can do this much or that much. So I use assignments that way. And yeah, musicality comes into play as well.
I like your idea, Bob, of the musical chairs. Everybody is trying something new. Some move one person, and the whole group is used to being in their own positions. They feel like, because you probably have with moving people around inside, you have some kind of intention that maybe this person isn't cutting it here. If you make that so apparent, then they feel like they're picked on, and nobody else had to move, but I did, so I must be doing a terrible job. I'm not coming back next week, kind of thing. But doing that whole shuffle, and then a few of the people go, that wasn't a big deal. I rang fine in that other spot. It does open up that idea. Earlier class, it may be completely obvious to the group that's on here, but we were talking about assignments in one of mine, and putting new people next to pretty experienced people, and not putting two new people right next to each other, I think is really important. So, they learn a lot from you as a director, but they learn even more from their neighbor, I think. So just they're looking over and they're matching the stroke, and they're seeing that, oh, that's how they did that kind of thing, is a much more non-threat, less than the director saying, I'm going to show you right now how to do this. Let me do it, or whatever. They pick that up and they look around and they get stuff that way too. So I think, you got to also be careful of, we all have in our group folks with stronger personalities that, if one of those stronger personality, very confident ringer is next to a new person and they're always going, you missed this, why didn't you get that, kind of thing, that could be not so good either. So you got to match that, the skill level, and make sure the personality isn't going to be one that's, is going to be an encouraging person, kind of thing.
Yeah, and all those things, one of the keys in the chart that I had for one of my sessions earlier today, that you can still get, by the way, had to do with building consensus within the group on a number of different factors. And one of them can be mutual respect, which is one thing I mentioned. Another can be consensus is that we're going to be moving around. And that's who we are. It's our identity. We'll do that. And it's no big deal. We'll just be moving around. But it's a consensus factor. If you don't have that consensus, then you've got conflict. That's the absence of consensus is conflict. So you really need to kind of build the consensus around what you want to accomplish, and then work to make that happen. Whether it's moving people around or your desire to ring at the highest level, whatever level music you are in, but at the highest quality, that's your goal. You need the consensus of everybody involved that they would like to do that as well, to ring at their best level in whatever level of difficulty music they happen to have in front of them. Consensus. All right, we're looking for more ideas and questions coming our way.
While we're doing that, Bob, I was going to offer a little thing that came up in one of our earlier sessions, that accepting mediocrity, right? Our instrument, people ask me all the time, you've done this for 31 years. Aren't you burned out yet? And it's like, oh gosh, I on the scale of what the things that I want to achieve and want to get to with making music with this instrument, I'm just getting started, right? Mm-hmm. But, so many people, when it affects us with grants and other things, and when we try to present ourselves to be considered for an artist series and so forth, people have a perception of this instrument that, what I heard was in church was pretty good. The bell choir looked really good. They all had their, matching robes, and they got tables and all that stuff. They didn't play so well, but oh my gosh, they seem to be having a good time. They like each other, and all these other roundabout non-compliments kind of thing. It always intrigues me how, there's a different level of acceptance of this instrument compared to other, other musical art forms like choral groups and so forth. And part of that is our own doing as directors. As I've done different things around the country, and I hear people, working with a choir, getting them ready for something this Sunday, and they really may be playing music above their skill level, but they've said, by gosh, we're a level 4 choir. We played a few level 4 pieces, and we could never play a level 2. because that would be, embarrassing kind of thing. But, some of those level 2 things, first of all, the leveling system is not perfect. It's somewhat arbitrary. There's some guidelines by the guild, but there's no third party that, the publishers put those numbers on themselves, and they're the ones that sell music. So they often, under level them to make sure they sell, because level 4s don't sell, kind of thing. I've heard publishers say, but why do we sometimes put our ringers in a position like I've heard this exact quote before? Guys, we're playing this Sunday whether you're ready or not. Oh, talk about a demotivator. Like, what about if you're really not getting it this week and that middle section is really, we're having a hard time? Leave that out. Skip that part. Skip to measure 67 after you've played that and play it. Getting confidence within your group, I think, is really, really important. Wanting them to come back next week. But boy, if they're playing when they're not ready and they're not showing that confidence when they step up in front to play in front of church, it's going down in no time. So I think we all need to work on, on the level of, acceptance of this instrument and not accepting mediocre stuff, because we know what could be done here. We know it's amazing. We're all into handbells. Anyhow, little soapbox.
I heard one of the concerts last week at National. It was a double concert. It was the All Stars group, which is all that means is there was an audition process of those attending at National who wanted to do something like this, and they went through an audition process and were selected to be part of this group, and then they would go off and rehearse crazy music with a wonderful clinician, and then perform. So they first saw their notes on Thursday, and Saturday they performed. Okay. The back-to-back aspect of that concert was the teens, Distinctly Teen. And Distinctly Teen played first. And that's a similar kind of deal in that they brought teenagers, that prerequisite, to National by way of an audition process of some way to select these students out. And then they performed similarly with that. As far as the performance quality goes, the Distinctly Teen group had issues with some of the togetherness a little bit here and there, and every now and then, a sound that was unexpected, a non-musical unexpected moment. But boy, they made up for that and more with their energy and their visual body language. They were just rocking and rolling. Not playing rock and roll music, but they were energized and were just exuding that, and the audience was receiving that and overlooked some of the inconsistencies of the notes or the performance quality and just really enjoyed it. And then the all-star group came up, technically played better, but emotionally did not play as much. And of the two, I enjoyed the teens, because they spoke more. They exuded more energy and emotion with what they did. So it doesn't always have to be perfect to be appreciated and enjoyed. I don't know. I just thought that was an interesting presentation that they did. Let's see. Somebody have a question out there? I don't see anything else at the moment. Come on, folks, you can think of something. We're here. Dave, what the first ensemble, handbell ensemble that you directed? Did you have a church group or a different community group, or what was your genesis?
Yes. My wife, fiance, and I at the time, I told the story in one of our classes, but probably everywhere. We were moving to Raleigh. We had jobs jobs here. We're both from the Northeast. And as we were looking for churches, had a certain set of criteria, as you do when you select a church. And on the top of the list was an active handbell program. Somewhere further down the list was the pastor and other factors of the church, but handbells was up at the top because once you're hooked, you're hooked. And I was a big part of my, middle school, high school, and a little bit in college. So rang in that for a year and a half before the director at the time decided she was going to retire. And to be honest, it happens to a lot of people. They sort of get their arms twisted. I was guilted in, Dave, if you don't take this over, the bells will be put in the closet. And somebody got wind that I knew a little bit about beat patterns from drum major and, choral conducting that I had done. And I kept the program going. We grew it a little bit from 3 to 4 to 5 octaves and did some summer concerts. So I was always disappointed as we really worked on a piece to play in church this particular Sunday. If everybody didn't get to hear that, I wanted everybody to hear it. We were going to do a great job, and not everybody was there that Sunday, and that was their opportunity. It's not like today where we have everything on Zoom you can go back and watch and whatever, but I was like, gosh, we now put this back in the files and we don't play it. I said, what if we, with the exception of the very seasonal stuff at Christmas, what if we pulled back? We have the same personnel from September to May. What if we pulled back some of those pieces, did an extra Saturday rehearsal, and added one secular piece, a show tune or a Sousa march or something fun, and did a little concert, 45-minute hour concert. And the last 2 or 3 years that I did that handbell program, that was our big thing. We worked towards that early June. We called it Summer Bell Fest, where we pulled back some of the original pieces and some of the hymn tunes, and then a secular piece or two. And that became popular not only in the church, but in the community. People came out to it. And a core group of us said, we really like this concert thing and be able to share this way in a concert program. So that idea of doing bell concerts then, and being inspired by Westminster when they toured to our area several times, I thought, I want to do, community-based kind of thing and be able to do concerts. And we do a lot of church things as well, and especially churches thinking about getting bells, we can show them what can be done and so forth. But doing a program of music was really fun for me. So that spawned the idea. Malmark lent us bells for 6 months. We rehearsed it, different retirement centers early on that, we in exchange for giving them little concerts. And that's how we got started with the Raleigh Ringers.
Awesome. Oh, good. We have some questions. Thank you for thinking of things and putting them out. Oh, what's great. What is the best mistake you've ever made as a director? Dave, do you ever make a mistake?
Oh, it's like trying to think of which one. Yeah,
I know. I'll give you one. I mean, in all seriousness, the biggest mistake I've probably made was to over program my group with a given piece. The mistake was, I think it's within their reach, and it really wasn't. I mean, we did okay on it, but it wasn't the spectacular piece that I really wanted them to come away with and to have done. It was performance okay, but it wasn't performance wow. And that's probably it. I still put it on the program, and it was all right, but I wish I had that one back probably to do that again. Dave?
Yeah, I think since we're sharing our deepest thoughts here, there was one time in 30 years, and I wish there were 0 times, that we had to just stop. That something wasn't going well. That we've all experienced it some with the Raleigh Ringers. I hoped I never would, and it was saber dance. and we went into a ditch and we couldn't figure out where we were, and we had to just stop and get a measure number and return.
I bet it was
And
a 3/4 section.
yes, it was that. Yeah, that you direct in one, that fast 3/4 section, and people were off, and so that song became known as the Saber Ditch because we went down into the ditch. And for some reason, I haven't programmed it since because there's still this memory that's a little bit embarrassing. It says that could happen again. Oh no! So
well, you are dissuading me from programming that again. I waited 23 or 24 years before I pulled that one out because I was fearful of it, honestly, because I know it's difficult and whatnot. And I had the right group, and it was awesome. So I was happy for that. And I probably won't program it again for a while because I want that one to remain in my memory as a good one.
Yep.
Thank you. Suda, let's see. There are a variety of methods of four in hand. Do you ask all your ringers to use the same method, not asking for an endorsement of one in particular? When I first was directing at a church, a particular church, it was the second church, as I remember now, I think. But the second church, I had a four in hand ringer. She was excellent. She got all the notes and did very well and all of that. But she did it totally different than I expected and that I prefer today. But she did it differently. And the normal way is you're doing octaves in the one hand and octaves in the other, and then you ring or you knock based on the handle direction, gives you control over just this or just that. Or if you do a combination swipe, you get both. And that's kind of the normal four in hand. Well, this person, she did four in hand with chromatics. So she had like I guess B flat and B natural in the same hand, and then C and C sharp. I picked the wrong position, but anyway, it was chromatic with the four bells, and to play octaves, I believe she had to put those down and pick up the octaves of the accidentals that would appear. So she was just going da 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 da, that kind of thing, and boy, she was good at it. But I would have a hard time wanting to teach it that way. I found good success in the way that I've mentioned, which is the octaves and knock and ring, and that seems to be probably the prevalent method that is out there. Dave?
Yeah, that's pretty much what most of my ringers do. There might be a little slight variation, but and we do that, like you say, the twist to get both when you need to get both, and then you've got them separate. General comment about it just happened last night, so it's fresh in my memory. Our one ringer that's new to the group right now, we had to do things a little bit differently. We didn't do full auditions this year. We just let everybody from 2020 come back, and a few people moved and changed jobs and stuff. So we added ringers a little by invitation. We don't usually do that. And she was the only one that's brand new to our group. Never the others we invited had been in our group before, but I noticed last night, she's playing a middle position. I think it was D and E5, and there was one part where I could see that she needed to do. It was a chromatic thing where she had a D sharp and E pretty close together. And she put the D and D sharp in a four in hand setup for way longer than she needed. So she kind of had to do that. There was another solution that was a better solution, but she had it pages before she had her hands that way, and pages after she had her hands that way. She started the piece with her hands that way for this one measure that she had to do this. and she wasn't getting a lot of sound. You know, the problem with forehand sometimes is, are you getting a consistent volume with each way you're ringing? And people that are really good at it, and you know, they do get a consistent volume. If you're getting new at it, you're getting a different volume whether you're knocking or, you know. And she wasn't. And you know, I used to think that duplicate bells were cheating. I mean, the first 10 years or so with the Raleigh Ringers are like, no, we got to figure this out without duplicate bells. Then I went, you know, we need to play things where we have the highest probability of success.
Mm-hmm.
When you step up there and you say, if I have an extra bell set, I'm at a 99% probability. Extra bell set, I'm at a 70% probability. But oh my gosh, we played with one bell set. You know, nobody gave us an award for that. Yeah. So we quickly came to the conclusion that it's okay to have extra bells. So last night, and I don't even know if she realized all the spells we had. We've only had 3 rehearsals. That was our 3rd rehearsal since starting again. And so I will avoid somebody in middle bells doing 4 in hand and getting a light volume. I will jump right to getting an extra bell and giving it to another person before I do that. So just a side point.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Taylor, let's see. Banter. Overprogram, it's an easy trap to fall into. I feel that one in my soul. Yes, yeah, that happens. All right, Charles, I have an inherited problem in that the lowest octave ringers consistently use mallets. They are very resistant to ringing because, here's the phrase, we've always played them with mallets. Yeah. You know, part of that might be a physical limitation on their part that they may or may not wish to share with you. It might be that they have a difficult time actually managing the weight of those bass bells, and so you know it's a struggle and a strain on their wrists and whatnot. And part of that can be solved with better technique in the bass ringing area. Now, I did this in the earlier session, so I'll do it again because this is Q&A. But if the bass bell is on the table, this is on the table now. The bass bell, we're talking about the low, like the 3 range, okay, or even the 2s. So if this is sitting on the table, the last thing off of the table, if it is the lip of the bell, the bass bell, that is the worst you can do. I mean, you can see it's exaggerated because I'm sitting, but if the lip of the bell is the last thing off the table, look what's happening with my wrist, bending out a weird shape, and now all of that extra weight is on this strained part of the wrist, and it really is hard to lift up and manage that way. So the proper technique is actually to, on the table, you actually push down on the handle, and it forces the bell off the table without any weight going into the hand. It gets to straight across with the wrist, and then you lift it all up as one unit. So there's this extra strain of the extra weight that's going off over here doesn't play a role in this, and it might be more comfortable for them. The last part of the bass bell technique is they push it in, they lift it up, and then when they play a bass bell of 2 or even a 3, you because it's that range, you have to change the strike point. Normally, ringing bells, the kind of strike point is I can't show you on camera, a little bit lower. It's down here somewhere where you can't see my hand. But in the bass range, you want to play nose level and up. Strike point is nose level and up. And that's because, again, the weight of the casting, if you play it low, if I was lower, and sorry, I hit the mic again. If I was lower, it's got a lot of effort and weight. And there again, the wrist is in a weird position. If it is up, it never bends and it's never strained, and that can be helpful. So that would be a thought in your situation, is that, well, maybe it's a physical thing and not so much the mallet thing that's going out there. Last thing I would say is might consider having an extra person involved in that range and take some of the physical nature out of that. Dave?
Yeah, we talked about almost that exact example in the musicality session. Some of you may have been in there. It's too bad we don't know who was in what and so forth. It's hard. But it was one of the detriments to musicality was when we do that exact thing, substituting mallets. You know, some pieces it is okay. It is okay if it's a marcato, it's of that kind of feel, and you'd happen to want to do it that way. But where it bothers me is when it is a more lyric, expressive piece, and we're just we're taking the value away. Oftentimes, thud, thud for half notes. Part of me is I don't know if inheriting a bell choir that always does something some way is difficult. So getting that kind of change. It's the same thing Bob talked about with changing positions. I'll only play in this position, and that's the only thing I know how to do, kind of thing. And you dig your heels in, but communicate how. Even by playing a recording, I don't know if it would break through with this person, but communicate how it does. It does affect the musicality of the piece. You're now, mallets project louder, so you'll hear it'll just take away from the musicality. So I don't know, you're not picking on the person by doing this. You're doing it because it's affecting the overall, the overall performance of the piece, and it takes away from that. But, and it's probably the case that, adding another ringer, they're probably used to doing that because we don't have enough ringers and we have to cover the bells that way. But strength is not the problem.
The other mention I would make about bass bell technique that might be also in here. One could, if you can imagine this is a little bit bigger. Here we go. That's a big bell. Okay, let's say that's a C3. You can take it off the table, like I was mentioning, but you could also use some fingers up here and help you pull it upright when you have an opportunity to do so. And last thing on that, Dave's got an F sharp 2. Is that what you have behind you?
It's a G sharp 1.
Oh my gosh, perfect. Okay,
yeah.
Pick that up. I'm making him do it. All right. And try to get on camera with it. There you go. So one might think with this ginormous bass bell that you would want to rock it forward like you normally ring a bell. But if you grab the fuzzy, you can like a pluck, you can use a thumb and power it forward.
Is that sounding?
Terribly.
It's aluminum.
It's below the frequency of that bell is below what this platform transmits. So it's really broken up quite a bit. But the point is that you can lift it carefully. You can use two hands, lift the bell up, and then just grab the clapper and play it like that. And that
and we do that. We do that often if we want a very strong attack on a bass note. I mean, it's not necessarily always just for the weight problem, but I want an attack that I you can actually get by throwing the clapper. You can get a louder hit than any motion, even with two hands. So the other big advantage of throwing the clapper is you are looking inside the bell, and you can watch it hit. The unison of playing together is much easier to pull off because you are watching the clapper hit the front of the casting versus when you're swinging a big bell like that. Yeah, you're probably going to get it right, but you're guessing a little bit more than the exactness of throwing the clapper. So we throw clappers a lot. That's a good point to bring up, Bob.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point to mention that timing is more accurate when you throw that clapper head. That's a great point. Great point. Yeah, attitude is what Charles, you're saying is the issue more than the technique or whatever. Yeah, I think what Dave said earlier about the musical reasonings behind not malleting at this time. And I would also add the visual aspect as well, because if everybody else is doing a unison chord like this, and you're over there with the bell and the mallet, it doesn't look like everybody else. So bring it up with two hands if you want, and gentle at nose level and higher. Great. Thank you. Thanks, Charles. And yeah, thank you for your comment that follows. Good. Looking for another question. Dave, you have a question for me?
How did Austin Handbell Ensemble get started? Or did you join it after it got started? I
I
can't
was
remember.
a founding member. Yeah, it was a person, a single person thought that it would be a nice idea to get different directors together and play as a community group. And so they got a few of us together to talk about it. And then we put out the word and got people in, and started with not knowing anybody and not knowing skill levels. And it was very mixed, it turns out. And then through a lot of things that took place in the way of standards and quality efforts and wanting to get better, consensus. I mean, a lot of good things happen as all of this, and it has just gotten stronger and stronger. I'd like to say every semester, if it was semester based, it feels like it's gotten stronger and stronger. And that's been 25 years, and that's been pretty amazing to see that happen on a consistent basis. But it happens because consensus is there, and the standard of quality is communicated, and the skill sets are taught. I mean, we taught at the beginning, and now we're actually getting people moving into Austin who are members of other community groups from around the country who happen to be moving to Austin. And that's just awesome. There's no real teaching necessarily. It's just
Yeah.
come on in, and here's how we just adjust to the way we are. That's great. Watch my conducting. I'm different than you are. Your experience, but just watch, and they'll catch on, and then away we go.
But today you're not all directors, right?
Oh no, not at
Yeah.
all.
That's how it started, but it evolved to, you know, just
Yeah,
whoever's skilled enough to play. Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, it's been fascinating to participate in since the beginning.
Here's another question I have for you, because I've always been one of my bucket list things is I've admired what you've done at Baylor and some of the college programs. I've never gotten the opportunity to work with a college group. I'd love that. I just feel like, makes you feel younger, I'm sure. And it's kind of the energy from the kids, and
Hey,
just like this,
what are you saying?
I want to feel younger. I'm looking for a way to do that, but you've got two. How do you approach your two groups differently when you've got, two groups that do really, really, good stuff? They're excellent groups, but they're a whole different, group of folks. So do you find yourself mainly doing the same stuff, or do you have a whole different approach when you go do the Baylor stuff?
I'll be starting my 12th year at Baylor. So I will back up and say the first couple of years, it was hard because my experience had been with church groups where I had longevity. I had ringers in my church groups that have been in that same group I was directing for 25 years. And I came in and started there, and they stayed with me for the next 20 years. So, I mean, longevity completely. And with my community group, also lots of longevity. With the college group, I am very lucky if there is a student who manages with their scheduling to be in for 8 semesters. I mean, there's been maybe this many people in 12 years, 10, 11 years that have made it all the way through each semester. And everybody else, I've just got to be patient and allow them to tell me I've got a scheduling conflict. It's the only time that class is offered, and I need to use it to graduate with. So, okay, go do that. And I generally get those people back. I've been very fortunate with that. I feel like that they've come back. But what has made the difference from those first few years for me was to recognize that the attitude has to be different on the college level than a community group, and that is that you are there to field a group of who is there, and just bring these people through this experience, knowing that they will be leaving you relatively soon. And it's that knowing that they are going to be leaving me that is sometimes difficult. I get to know these kids and appreciate them, and I learn about their majors, and they share things that I wouldn't think they would share with me more privately, perhaps. Okay, but I am just there temporarily for them and to provide them with as good an experience as I can. And we have started people from scratch pretty much every semester. I will start at least 1, 2, even 3 people, never touched a bell before. And by the end of the semester, we're ringing certainly level 3 and a good number of level 4 pieces. In the past, at least, I've been able to accomplish that. It varies. Every semester is different. So it's just an attitude change on my part that makes it work.
Yeah. How do you deal, and this could be the same thing for all of our choirs. How do you deal with the folks, the brand new folks that you're teaching? Do you pull them aside separately and work on the technique and so forth? Because you could bore the heck out of the ones that have been there for several semesters, right?
Yeah. No, it's a lot of teaching up front. And for the first probably 4 rehearsals, maybe 3 to 4 rehearsals, I have those new people out matched up with the experienced ringers, and they are working with them on the basics. We start them off with a good system to play together on time, vertical alignment, and it also happens to teach perfect form. And so when they come back in, they're good to go. I don't have to break habits. They've established the good habits from the get-go. But sending them out, and I don't send them with the same person each next rehearsal. I get different perspectives to them. And then we, I pick very easy music to put in front of the group for the first time with those people involved, so that even though it's like a level 1 piece, I will put a level 1 piece in front of this group, and we play with those new ringers being successful. That's a key. They need to feel successful. And then from there, we start teaching quickly and go. And I would say by the 5th week in, we're already at level 2 to 3. And not just on one piece, but multiple pieces in doing so. Halfway through the group, through the semester, we got everything in the folder and we're working through stuff. So it's a very fast-paced learning. Kids learn fast.
So are they in it for a grade, or is it just a club on the side that they do, or do they get credit and grades?
They get, I give grades. 11 years so far, and never anyone has earned anything but an A. And I tell them that up front. It's really hard to not get an A in here. And everybody gets an hour credit. And if they're a music major, they get an ensemble credit, 1 hour ensemble credit, which happens to be the same credit that they would receive if they were in the top orchestra or the wind ensemble. It's the same length amount of credit. So we are equal to the other ensembles in that respect. So it's good.
Cool.
Jesse, in church choir, it's the same, all different levels of expertise. Yes, it is. And choir directors have to have to keep that in mind, picking repertoire. A Bach cantata with people who have a hard time matching pitch. Challenge. So yeah,
But
you have to know the ringers.
And also, if you're there are pieces of music that are kind of set up such that, and oftentimes it's a bass. I wouldn't say it's all the time. That's set up that you've got some pretty straightforward things in part of the piece, in the other part of the piece. So careful selection of music can help having that mixed choir, where you do have some challenges for those guys, because that's the big worry: is are you going to lose them if they're like, oh man, we're the people all the time, and I'm not challenged at all. Well, some repertoire affords you that, I think.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the topic that I covered in one of my sessions, but it's very, very accurate. My illustration was a lot of the pop music arrangements. Pop music is pop music of the day, at least, and it's usually found in the arrangements where there's a melody going on, and it's kind of complex because it's trying to emulate the words, which are flying by. So it's kind of rhythmically difficult, which leads right into challenging the upper table, which is where your best ringers usually are.
Yeah.
And the rest of the piece is made up of repeated eighth notes, melody, all the way through kind of thing. And so it's really easy. And so you can have a mixed level group. And Jesse, you've got a mixed church choir group like this, but you can have a mixed group that is challenging to those that need the challenge, and easier for those that need it to be easier. So, yeah. Thank you for your comment and question there, Jesse. We have 5 minutes in time remaining. Are there any other questions? We are here for you. Yes, it is, Jesse. Thinking mainly of the bell choir, but also true of the other. Yes, absolutely. Well, resources, I'll throw out and maybe another question may pop up, but resources, because, I was a technology consultant for 17 years at a regional education service center, which means we worked with multiple school districts, in our case, 59 school districts. And I got to train different types of teachers, and in particular, technology coordinators. But I always had a particular penchant for the librarian, because a librarian, when they came in for a session, I would create some sessions for librarians for technology training. And they were librarians I felt for, because there's one on their campus, and they hardly ever get with other librarians. And if they want to talk trade and do things of that nature, they needed a place to gather and a resource to get together with. So I've always felt like handbell directors are kind of like that. At your church, there's one of you, and yet there's so many others in the area. So as far as resources, I would try to reach out to some of the other local area handbell directors. Maybe set up a Thursday lunch and just, get together socially and talk shop and not talk shop and do that. Electronically, Facebook has several handbell-based groups. Handbell-L is one of them. Handbell People is another. Team Handbell is yet another. I think they all have the word handbell. So if you did a search in Facebook for handbell, you'd probably come up with some. The national organization, which I mentioned, Handbell Musicians of America, awesome to get involved with, and to take advantage of what they have to offer. And again, mentors, you can reach out to pretty much anybody in the handbell world. Um, Dave's got an email, and as do I. And we receive emails, and we generally will respond to emails. So
Yeah.
feel free to find us and ask us. And for that matter, anyone in America, if you have a question about a piece that a composer wrote, email the composer. They're very willing to reach out and visit with you about things. So don't feel like you're out there isolated, alone. Find these resources and take advantage of them. Thank you, Charles, for the comment. Appreciate it. Anything else from Dave?
I don't think so. I mean, you mentioned our composers being, they love chatting with you. I mean, the advantage is that yes, they are accessible, and frankly, our art, only really got started in the 50s. So most of our composers are alive, so we got that going for us too. So.
Yeah. What other musical type of ensemble can say that their history is not quite 100 years old? We've had handbells for longer, but as far as in America, it's not quite 100 years. So cool stuff.
Yep.
Thank you, Taylor. And thank you, everybody else, for attending and asking questions, participating. And even if you didn't ask a question, we appreciate you for being here and spending time with us. So thank you for the day. And we thank Baylor for inviting both of us to participate in training sessions with you. And thank you for attending
it's been a great day.
Alleluia.
Yep. Thanks,
All
Bob.
right. Thank you.